This is our 18th podcast in the series for the 20th of Elul, Monday, September 11th. Today we're looking at the section of prayers called Shofarot, the verses about the shofar blowing. In the Unatana Tokef prayer, which is the gateway to the rest of the Rosh Hashanah prayers, we read that a great shofar is sounded and a still small voice is heard, a very loud sound and a very soft one. This still small voice, as it is most frequently translated, is commonly referred to in the religious literature of the Western traditions. It comes from a famous episode in the Bible concerning Elijah the prophet. This is in the first book of Kings, the middle of chapter 18, going to the middle of chapter 19. In the northern kingdom, ruled by King Ahab and Queen Jezebel, people had been turning away from God to follow their ruler's god, named Baal. Elijah had challenged the prophets of Baal to a contest, and Elijah had won. God had answered Elijah's prayers. Elijah then had the pagan prophets killed, enraging Queen Jezebel, who swore to kill Elijah. Elijah had to run for his life, and he went into seclusion in a cave in the southern mountains. God spoke, asking, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" He poured out his woes, telling God that he wanted to die, that he had been very zealous for God, but all of Israel had forsaken the covenant and killed God's prophets, and he, Elijah, was left totally alone. God told him to stand on the mountain, and God passed by. There was a terrific wind, an earthquake, and a fire. But, the text tells us, God was not in those. After the fire was a still small voice, it says. And that voice asked again, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" And Elijah gave exactly the same answer. "They have all forsaken the covenant, and I'm the only one left." God then told him to go and anoint a new king for Israel, that is for the northern kingdom that he came from, and a new prophet, Elisha, in his place. And God said, "I will leave 7,000 in Israel, all the knees that have not bowed to Baal, and every mouth that has not kissed him." He was telling Elijah that the people needed a new prophet because Elijah had given up on them, even though there were thousands who were faithful to God and needed a leader. He wasn't asking Elijah to go back to death at the hands of Jezebel, but he would not have Elijah being their leader anymore. In retrospect, we see that the still small voice which asked, "What are you doing here?" was saying, "Why are you here when our people need you?" On Rosh Hashanah, the main focus is on the great sound, the shofar, the ram's horn, which with its ancient and piercing cry shatters our comfortable reality. We hear it many times in the course of the services. In the verses of shofar, we recall that the shofar sounded on Mount Sinai amid thunder and lightning. Its sound made the entire camp of people tremble. They saw the sound of the shofar as well as the flames and the smoking mountain. It's very much like this scenario with Elijah. Hearing the shofar now, we are to remember that, and we're challenged to listen in a different way. Afterward, when the still small voice asks us, "What are you doing here?" we don't want to be like Elijah, still repeating the self-righteous words he said at his low point. We are to hear the shofar in a way that will renew our commitment, ask us to reconsider how we are living, what we are doing here. In the 10 verses from the Bible, we discover that the shofar was used on many occasions. At the renewal of the moon, which is what we're doing today, as an instrument of praise, along with other horns and drums and cymbals, flutes and harps. The shofar is to be blown when God fights with the Israelites against their enemies, and when the Jews are ingathered from the lands of the diaspora, the exile, and come together on the holy mountain in Jerusalem. In our everyday prayers, we ask God to sound the great shofar for our freedom and gather our exiles. So the shofar is a sound that, like thunder, can cause alarm, but it's also a sound for gathering people together in jubilation, a sound toward a hopeful new future. At the stone on the upper southwest corner of the temple, on Friday afternoon, in ancient times, a shofar would be sounded to alert people to the imminent arrival of Shabbat, which was also a herald of the world to come. For us, on Rosh Hashanah, the shofar is a call to listen to the question and a call to come together to remember our deeper common purpose, so we can make this festival of the new moon a renewal for everyone.